I'm actually really honored to be here, and it was actually kind of funny because Sage was absolutely correct. We were driving out to Fort Worth for kind of like one of our day dates, but it's kind of usually intermixed with work, and we try to make fun with everything that we do. And I just remember we were driving back from Fort Worth, and she got really quiet. And usually, it's when she gets really really quiet, it's when I know that either something just happened or she's listening with intent to God. And literally she picked up her phone and she starts texting. And when she was texting, and she was texting with authority, and I was like, are you okay? She's like, I just have to ask Heather something. I have to ask Heather if you can speak. And I'm like, if I can speak to what? So it was almost like I got voluntold to do this without being asked. And then it was just like, yeah, absolutely, I would be honored. So just like Sage said, I absolutely love conversation. We have the most amazing relationship when it comes to that. And some of our greatest times are when we're out just for a normal walk, or we both come home after a long day and we sit on the couch and we just kind of have just that uninterrupted time with where we can just kind of like, we like to call it diarrhea of the mouth, where we can literally just go out there and just let everything out, lay it all on the table. And then usually it's once we're done, we're like, okay, time to go to bed. And we go to bed and we start over anew every single day. Yes, so my testimony is a little bit, obviously it's my story. And just like we had talked about, or somebody had said earlier, is that not everybody's testimonies are the same. Not everybody goes through the same things in their lives. But the thing is, the one foundation that we always have is we have God. God is always going to be that foundation for us, no matter what goes on, and no trials, no tribulations, they're all going to be the same. Is we're going to have that same foundation. So I'm going to start, before I start with my testimony, there is just one passage that I always love to read before I start my testimony, because it's something that weighs on me every single day. And even when I was going through some of my darkest times, when I felt like I was in prison, very similar to what Paul was going through, this is a scripture that got me through some of the hardest times. And it's in James 1:2 that says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you are faced with trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Now, it's kind of hard for people to understand that, like when you're facing some of the darkest times in your life, how you are supposed to have pure joy. Now, it's not saying that in the midst of that negativity, that trial, that tribulation, or just in the face of danger, or anything that you're going through, that you're just supposed to put on a happy face and we're just supposed to be happy. That's not what the passage is saying. It's saying that we have to live in a life that we have to consider it joy that we're going through these trials, because they are going to make us stronger. They are going to help us push through. So Sage actually was laughing at me about 20 minutes ago because I have some visual aids. So as I'm going through my testimony, I want you to have two things in mind. I want you to think about this in context to what you want to be in your life. Do you want to be an egg, or do you want to be a tennis ball? Okay. I'll come back to that, but I just want you to have that in the back of your mind as you just kind of listen to this. And because we all go through things, and there are times in our lives that we're going to have to either be that tennis ball, or we're going to have to be that egg. It's kind of funny that we talk about trials and tribulations. And even this morning, Sage and I were just talking about just straight up irony. She showed me your daily walk and your daily devotional, and it's kind of very perfect to like what our life is together. So 10 years ago, and it's kind of a crazy story, but 10 years ago today, Sage was actually going through one of the darkest times in her life. And actually 10 years ago, in 2 weeks, on October 27, 2011, was the start of the darkest phase in my life. I served in the United States Army for 17 and a half years. And on that day, on October 27, 2011, I was stationed in Kandahar, Afghanistan. It was on Camp Nathan Smith, which is a very small, we call it a forward observation base. And what we are is we're really in the middle of the city. And it was an old fruit factory. And so we were there, and our job was to train the Afghan National Army so that they can actually take over their country themselves when we, as you guys know, we abruptly exited. So we were there to train the Afghan National Army. And that day just was going on just like any other. We had just come back from a security mission where we were walking through the city, just basically patrolling the streets, making sure that everything was safe. And I had come back to the base, and everybody, all of my soldiers. So I had 120 soldiers that came under my command, and they were all going back to the tents because we were all going to get about 4 to 5 hours of shut eye before we had to go out for our night patrol. And so all the guys were in the tent. They were all playing video games or watching TV, or some of them were just passed out on their bunks. I had decided to go and take a shower because I just stunk. I can still smell it to this day. So I went and took a shower, and it was kind of weird because while I was in the shower, I heard probably the loudest explosion that I have ever heard. And immediately I jump out. I still had shampoo in my hair. I'm jumping out. I'm throwing back my uniform. And what we learned is that on the south side of our gates, we had two vehicle-borne IEDs. And what that is two suicide bombers that had about 400 pounds of explosives had drove their cars right into the side of our into the side of our base. And what that did is that created a huge hole in the side. And so the enemy really, they learn our tactics and procedures, and they know that we're going to run towards the explosion because we need to assess the battle damage of what's going on. Well, they had set it up. And what it was is they knew that we were all going to run towards the explosion, where we had snipers all the way around our base. And as we were running, they just started shooting at all of us. And so I was a part of a personal security detail where my job was to protect the general and all the dignitaries that we had on the base. Well, I was trying to rally my troops and get them to their vehicles so that we can set up a security perimeter. When out of the corner of my eye, I saw my platoon leader, one of my best friends, Joshua Lawrence. He was running across the breezeway to go get the general. And that's when I noticed that one of the snipers had shot him through the neck. And so without action and without just even thinking about it, I turned and ran towards him. And I actually started trying to administer aid to him, trying to get him to safety. And while I was down, I was kind of, if you can kind of visualize it, he's laying on the ground, he got shot in the neck. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of being gory, but I want you guys to really understand kind of the premise of this is I was kind of on him. It kind of probably looked like I was choking him, but I was trying to place some pressure on the wound. And I was actually dragging him over to the bunker so that I can get him in with the soldiers that were taking shelter. And we have protective body armor, and there's a 2-inch gap between the plates on the sides and on the back and the front. And while I was down administering aid, I was shot between that little 2-inch gap. So the bullet had ricocheted, it had come in through my back, pierced through my sciatic nerve, hit my left hip, and then ricocheted back and shot out my right hip. So I'm probably the only person in the world that has an entry and an exit wound on the same side, just because of the way that the bullet ricocheted in. Immediately, I lost all feeling from my, basically from just below my chest all the way down to my feet. I tried to get up and started realizing that I couldn't walk, that something was wrong. And I had looked over to my right and I saw that the guy that had shot me was reloading his, it's a rocket propelled grenade. It's a grenade launcher on that they shoot over the shoulder. And I needed to do something. So I'm reaching for my weapon, couldn't reach it. And I reached down on Josh's chest that had his pistol. And as soon as I pulled that pistol out and I started firing back, that's when that rocket came in. And I just remember seeing this bright light. And the next thing I remember is that I woke up in Landstuhl, Germany 3 days later. In the time from when I was shot to when I was blown up by that rocket-propelled grenade, apparently I had died 3 times. I had lost consciousness and I was just completely out of it. I had lost over 150 cc's of blood. I was, at one point they had said that I had died for 6 minutes. And apparently I just kept coming back, and then I would go out again. But then when I woke up in Landstuhl, Germany, the first thing I remember waking up and going, where's Josh? Where are my soldiers? That's the only thing that I could think about. And I was trying to get out of bed, and I had realized that I was in a full body cast, literally from my right shoulder all the way down the entire right side. I had broken every single bone on the right side of my body. I had a complete knee replacement on my left leg. I had probably more pins, plates, and screws in my body than any one person should. And what I was told is, Josh he's recovering. He's in the room, 3 doors down, but he's in critical condition. And all I wanted to do was see Josh. I needed to just see that he was okay. But they said, no, you have to stay here because you are, unfortunately, you're never going to be able to walk again. And for somebody to hear that, especially for me, who prior to leaving for Afghanistan in 2011, I had always been an athlete. I had played football in college. I was an Olympic athlete. I did a sport of Taekwondo, which is a lot of kicking and punching. And so for somebody to tell you that you can no longer use your legs, the first thing out of your mind is like, no, you're lying to me. There's no way. I was like, I'm going to recover. I'm going to go back to my normal life. Everything's fine. I'm just going to go back to my soldiers and everything's going to be fine. And it wasn't until the next day when I was sitting there and they brought a chaplain into my room. And I still remember it was Chaplain Jason Tiger, who is still a great friend of mine, had been there for me literally through this really dark season of mine. And he had told me that Josh had died from his injuries. And that still today is something that resonates deeply with me. I wear a tattoo on the back of my arm that says devoted brother. And then it has his call sign, Lima 7 on there, just because he was somebody that was so near and dear to my heart. Because even when we were in Afghanistan together as leaders, it's like you kind of feel like you're on an island. And so we stuck together the entire time. So when I lost him, I felt like a piece of me died as well. And that is when the enemy took over. The darkness, the deep, dark dungeon, the prison that I felt like I was in, because immediately I had survivor's guilt. I had the guilt that I made it. Here I am in a wheelchair. Here I am never going to be able to walk again. But this young man, this guy who was only 22 years old, who had just gotten married to his wife, Brittany, just literally right before we left for Afghanistan. And now she's a widow. And this is when what I did is like what a lot of Christians do is when they're in their deepest, darkest moments, you start asking God, why? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Take me, bring him back, take my life. And that's when I was just like, okay, if this is what your plan is for me, then I don't want to have any part of it. I was that typical Christian that just blamed everything on God. And I lost my faith. I had been raised in a Catholic family. I was raised by my grandparents, and it was Catholic mass. Every Wednesday, every Saturday night, and every Sunday morning. I was, completely faithful and everything like that. But when this happened, I completely lost my faith. And flying back to the States, I just had this like anger, this this heartache. Here I am in Landstuhl, Germany, and there was something else weighing on my heart that I was just like, I didn't understand what this feeling was. And, I was married at the time. And I was wondering how come my wife at the time wouldn't come and visit me in the hospital. And so when I got back to the United States, and this is when it got even darker, is the first time that I had saw my ex-wife, she had been pregnant with another man's baby. And so again, I blame God. What are you doing to me? And it was in these dark times where they sent me from hospital to hospital for treatments, for surgeries. After 29 surgeries, I was just like, I give up. I had 29 different medications that I was on, and I just felt like a complete zombie. And I was just kind of like going through the motions every single day and just really not understanding what life was doing to me. or just what God was doing to me. And it was crazy because they had moved me from, I was at Fort Meade in Maryland, and then they sent me over to Brooks Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. And then they sent me back to Colorado Springs, and then they finally sent me to Seattle. And when I got to Seattle, and Sage will probably remember this because the first time that I ever brought her to Seattle, I showed her this second story room that I literally spent every waking moment in. I shut myself off to the world. I didn't want any friends. I didn't want anything. I just wanted to be alone. And this is where I really learned where God was. This is when I started listening with intent. I was sitting in my room, and I remember that Chaplain Tiger, the guy who had came to me and told me that Josh had passed, he came to me and he was just like, hey, I really want to pray for you. And I was like, you know what, don't even bother. There's no reason for you to pray for me because, God is already punishing me enough. And when Chaplain Tiger had told me this, it still resonates with me today. He goes, God's not done with you yet. And it was that word, yet. All of a sudden, I just heard it, and it was like slapping me left and right. Every time that I felt like I was down, I would hear "not yet." I would see it written on billboards. I would see it written in books, and I just started like trying to figure out what this voice in my head was. So I'll fast forward a little bit. I had already gone through a divorce. I was struggling to see my children, and it was actually on my birthday in 2014. So 2.5 years past the time that I was injured. And I was already thinking, I was like, okay, I'm gonna live the rest of my life in a wheelchair. What's going to be next for me? Nobody's going to want to hire me. Nobody's going to want to be with me. Just what is going on? And this is where I started just like, okay, God, if you're not done with me yet, what is your plan for me? And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and it was actually my birthday. And Sage will kind of let you know that this is kind of why I don't like my birthday, because it's a constant reminder of these dark times. I remember that I started getting what they call phantom pains. And when you're paralyzed, your brain works crazy. And we all know that your brain does crazy things, but it can actually make you feel pain where you can't even feel anything. And so I started feeling these pains in the left sides and the right side of my legs, but then at the bottom of my right foot, it was like this burning sensation. And I remember calling the nurse because I just needed morphine. I needed to get rid of this pain. And she came in, and as soon as she started giving me the morphine drip, I saw my pinky toe start wiggling. And she just looked at me. She goes, "Oh, that's probably just your nerve endings firing. It's going to do that. You just don't get your hopes up." So my brain is like, no, I'm going to beat this. So I just started. That's when the first time that I started realizing, it's like, you know what? Let me start getting back to my faith. Let me start praying to God, and like, I did that same typical thing that we see in movies, like, God, if you get me through this, I will do this. It was almost like the purpose before the promise. I have to do this, and then God will give me this. It's like, I promise that I will be, a devout Christian. I promise I will do this. And it was crazy because each day I started getting more and more feeling in my right foot. And it just started creeping up through my legs, and it was just a burning sensation. And it was about a week after that birthday in 2014 that I was able to move my legs. I was able to wiggle my legs. I was able to bend my legs. I was able to actually stand unassisted. I wasn't able to walk yet, but I was able to stand. And I thought that it was a great, progression for where I was at. And then I just remember this doctor telling me, he's like, well, you'll never walk again. You're going to be wearing braces. You're going to use a walker. You're going to use a cane. And I remember that night I told him, I was like, no, you're wrong. I am going to beat this. God's with me. And I think it was that time that I actually just admitted that God was with me. That's when I experienced my first miracle of God. Because that night, and I still laugh about it to this day, is I remember getting out of bed. I was like, you know what? I need to go to the bathroom, and I'm not going to ask for help. I pulled my catheter out, and I was going to the bathroom. I stood up, tried to take my first step, and I fell on my face. And when I say I fell on my face, I broke my nose, I was in a pool of blood. Nurse came in because she heard the ruckus, and she goes, "You tried to walk, didn't you?" I was like, "No, I didn't try to walk. I just fell out of bed." She's like, "Well, why is your catheter out?" I'm like, "I don't know." But it was in, and that's when I started talking about, I wanted to learn about the human mind. So I started realizing that, I had been sitting and laying pretty much in a wheelchair for 2.5 years, that I wasn't doing anything productive. I wanted to be productive with my life. And I realized that I was being a vegetable, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And so one of the things that I started realizing is, do I want to be the tennis ball, or do I want to be the egg? And what I mean by that is, if I were to drop these from right here, number one is I'd make a huge mess because this egg would crack under pressure. Or I can be this tennis ball and I can bounce back. So I always had these things in my mind that I wanted to be the one that can bounce back. And the first way that I did that is I enrolled in school, and I wanted to understand the mind. So I went and I got my master's degree in psychology. I had been going to school my entire life, and I just wanted to get back, and I wanted to learn. So I understood that your mind is a horrible thing to waste, and I was wasting it away for 2.5 years. So I went and I got my master's degree. It took me a little over a year to get it, but as soon as I graduated, here I am on my peak. I'm like, yeah, I'm walking. I was walking in a walker, and I had a cane, but there was still something like, okay, there's still something holding me back. So the doctor said, okay, we're going to go out to the track, and we're going to walk one lap without your cane, without your walker. We're going to see if you can do it. So I walked one lap, and I was like, I want to do it again. And he was just like, nope, you've met your threshold. We're going to do one lap a day for 6 months. So I walked a lap, and then when he left, I walked another lap, and I walked another lap. And I got to the point where I was walking a mile a day, and then I went to 2 miles a day. And then finally the doctor came back and says, okay, well, I have never seen anything like this before. And I remember looking at him and going, well, that's because you haven't seen anybody that has a heart for God. So fast forward another 3 months, I had gone through countless hours of physical therapy, occupational therapy, learning how to do the simple things like walking up the stairs, walking down the stairs, getting in and out of the shower, just the little things, putting on your shoes, the things that we take advantage of every single day. Those are the things that kind of resonated with me. And there's a 4-word phrase that I use all the time, and I use it with our family. I use it with all the people that I work with. It's hunt for the good. And the thing is every single day in our life, we're confronted with demons. We're confronted with negativity. But the thing is if we start with hunting for the good, then what happens is that's kind of the basis for the rest of our life. If you guys ever have an opportunity, go to YouTube and type in Admiral McRaven. It's the University of Texas commencement speech, but he talks about making your bed. And like, if you wake up in the morning, you make your bed, because that's the thing we do in the military every single day. No matter what happens throughout your day, at least you can come home and know that your first task throughout the day is you made your bed, and you get to come home and slide into a made bed. So it's a psychological aspect to be able to hunt for the good. Whether it's, think about when we pray to God, what's the first thing we do? We always give praise and thanksgiving to God for everything that He's provided in our life. So why are we giving God all this praise and thanksgiving, but we're not doing the same thing for ourselves? So 3 months after I started walking, I'm thinking I'm going back to my soldiers. I'm going to get 2.5 years to be able to retire from the military and accomplish one of the biggest things that I've ever done in my life. And then that's when I was told that I was going to be medically separated from the military, 2.5 years shy of being able to retire. So again, here I am on the peak, and all of a sudden I get knocked down, and here I am right back into a valley, trying to climb myself back up, because I went through this really dark time. And here I was divorced. I had been injured, and I was like, okay, I'm being thrown to the wolves. I've been in the military since I was 17 years old. I don't know what good I'm going to be to anybody. And I leave the military, and I struggled to find work. I was unemployed for a little over 9 months, and I found myself living out of my Jeep. I had um, about a 6 month period where I was homeless and I was living out of my Jeep. I would go down to a rest stop and I would sleep in the Jeep, and then I would wake up in the morning and I'd go to the base, because being medically separated, I still had the perks of being able to come on the base and use the gyms and everything. I would go into the gym, take my shower, and I would just go straight to the library and I would use their internet to be looking for jobs. It wasn't until 9 months later that I landed my first job outside of the military, and it was actually working with a nonprofit organization that helped veterans get back to work. And so I went through a bunch of training to learn how to do resumes and everything, and it just was not. I started hearing that phrase, "not yet." It's almost like, okay, what am I missing? There's something else in my life. And this is when I was diagnosed with basal cell carcinoma. Here I am again on my peak. I found my job, and then all of a sudden I lose the job because I'm going through chemotherapy. I'm losing my hair, and the job let me go because I was too sick to come to work. So again, I'm asking God, what are you doing with me? What is your plan for me? And I just kept hearing this, not yet, not yet. Um, I had decided that I was going to just do something on my own. I had reached out to a couple of contacts that I knew, and this is when I decided that I was going to start my own nonprofit. And I wanted to start this nonprofit with a couple of the guys that I had met in my past. And what it was is we would bring corporate executives and CEOs out to the wilderness, and we'd put them through a 3 or 4 day military operation so they can really understand what a veteran can offer their organization. But again, something was weighing on my heart, something was weighing on my shoulders, because I felt like I was exploiting myself. I was exploiting my Purple Heart, my injuries, to make money for this nonprofit organization. And I started realizing, I was like, there's got to be more. What is it? I had been injured in combat. I had battled cancer. I had gone through a nasty divorce. It's just what, and this is where I'm struggling with my faith. So again, I was like, I need to help. I need to do more. So I went and I went and got my PhD in social work, because I was like, I have to be able to help more. So I kept feeling like I needed to do something so I can take care of people, because I felt like that's what my calling was, but I just felt unfulfilled every single day. And I still remember it was February, it was actually January 27th, 2017. I got this random email from a company called Great Big Story from the Turner Network, which is CNN. And they had said that they wanted to do a commercial, with my nonprofit, but they wanted to partner with JCPenney. And I just kind of like ignored it. It's like, whatever, nobody wants. I was like, why would JCPenney want to partner with my nonprofit? And this is where God was slapping me in the face again, saying, you're not listening to me. Why aren't you listening with intent? Not yet. And I remember they said, we have 3 weeks. We have 3 weeks until this big shoot that we're going to be doing. So we need to make sure everything is in line, and we're going to pay you. So immediately, the first thing I thought of was prosperity. Hey, I got to make this money for my nonprofit. So we get everything set up, and I get up to Michigan, where we did all these missions that we did. And I remember I was like, this is going to be a train wreck. There is 4 feet of snow. It is negative 12 degrees, negative 30 with a wind chill. And I was like, these people are coming from all over the country. Most of them are coming from Texas. They've probably never seen snow. I was like, how are we going to make this work? And I remember walking into this rental house that we had, where we were going to be fitted for our suits that we were going to be wearing in this video. And I remember walking around the corner, and this is where I saw the most beautiful woman in the world, my wife, Sage. And she was the fashion stylist for this photo shoot, or for this video. And I remember that in that moment when I walked around the corner, everybody was having a good time. Everybody was laughing and joking. And I remember I just stood there kind of in awe. And I remember that's when I felt just God kind of release his grip on my heart and saying, that's why. I didn't know that, Sage had gone through, her tragic moment with her divorce literally 2 weeks before I got injured in Afghanistan. So at the same time we were going through the darkest stages in our lives, he was preparing us for what our life was going to be when we were brought back together. So I remember getting fitted in the suit, and we were talking about our kids. She was talking about her daughter, and she was like, "Are you on Snapchat?" I was like, "I don't even know what Snapchat is." And she was like, "Come on, we're going to be Snapchat besties." And I'm like, "Okay." So we got on Snapchat and we were messaging back and forth. And I remember getting back in the vehicle afterwards, and the guy that I worked with literally goes, "Oh, what'd you think about it? That's kind of weird, right?" I was like, "I don't know what I think, but I'm going to marry that woman one day." And he just kind of looked at me like, well, "Wow, that's kind of a bold statement." I was like, "No, I know God's speaking to me right now." And I remember just listening for the first time, and really just sat in a quiet room and was listening to God. And God was like, "This is what I've been preparing you for. You have gone through all these dark times and you remain faithful. Yes, you might have like lost your faith at a moment, but the thing is you remain faithful." And the only thing I can remember always going back to is when we go into Genesis and we start thinking about Abraham, all the times that Abraham tried to fight God, and he just remained faithful all the way through the time. And then what did he do? He gave them the land that he had promised them with descendants greater than the stars. And he just continuously played the biggest part in my life. And, you know, for the 3 days that we did the photo shoot or the video, I remember it was just banter between Sage and I. And I remember the last night I was like, "Hey, I'm going to come visit you," and everything like that. And she goes, "I don't do long distance." And I was like, "Well, all I can do is prove it to you." She's got that little grin on her face. I can see her at the top of the screen. But the thing is like, I was like, "Why?"
I was at this point, I was fighting God still. I was like, I'll never get married again. I will never meet. God will never show me the one. I will never do this. So I was still fighting. So sorry, I just had to say that was why I was like, I don't do this, I don't do that. But in that moment, in that whole few days, I remember being at the airport and I was like, it was just like something had hit me. Like it was this bright, shining light of like what my future was going to be. And I just had never felt God's arms around me so incredibly much after those 3 days. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
I had to.
no, I think the reason that it hit her is the fact that I sent her a plane ticket that I was coming to Dallas to visit her. Like, I didn't hear from her for literally about 3 hours. And I was like, "Oh, maybe that was a little too forward that I bought a plane ticket. Maybe I should have talked to her about it." And sure enough, no, it didn't work out. And I literally sat there for hours, like waiting for her to respond. And I would tell you there was a reason why I had over 900,000 sky miles on Delta. So sure enough, I flew to Dallas from Seattle every single weekend because I was still in my PhD program. I flew to Dallas every single weekend for 6 months. And in June, I proposed to my dream girl. And literally a month after I proposed, she goes, "Hey, we're going to Colorado. Why don't we just get married there?" There was no waiting. When you know, you know. But the one thing where I can tell you that you just listen to God with intent, and I know that I've said that multiple times, is the time that Sage and I went to church the very first time. We were going to Stonebriar Community Church with Chuck Swindoll, and one of the greatest pastors ever. And I remember sitting there, and I remember the exact same spot we were sitting, and we were sitting there listening to the sermon, and Chuck started talking about his time in the Marine Corps. And what was crazy about that is I look over at Sage, and she is bawling her eyes out. And I kind of look at her, I was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "He's talking about the Marine Corps. Why are you crying?" She's like, "I have been coming to this church for 10 years, and I never knew that he was in the military. Now, all of a sudden, you, this military man, this guy who had been injured in Afghanistan, come into my life, and now I sit here, and now all of a sudden God is revealing he's revealing all of this, this new revelations to me." And then he had started talking about Dallas Theological Seminary and how there's a lot of veterans that go there and so on and so forth. And I kind of looked at it, I was like, "Man, maybe I should go down and check out this DTS, this Dallas Theological Seminary." I just got married, and we were just trying to like figure out our lives together. So the next week, we decided to set up a visit to Dallas Theological Seminary. And we went down there. And as soon as we walked onto campus, we had that revelation again where all that not yet kind of revealed itself like, we are home. This is where we're supposed to be. And sure enough, I called the VA and they said, you have enough entitlement to pay for your degree. So for the next 4 years, I devoted myself to working full time and also being a full-time student in seminary. And this is where, the revelation to me was seminary kind of ruins the Bible for a lot of people because it becomes very legalistic. And what I learned is that when you're being graded upon your interpretation of certain scriptures or anything like that, this is where I really relied upon that foundation of God that I had in my life. And every single day I reflect back on my journey, and it could have been very simple for me to be this egg and crack under pressure because you know what? I deserved it. I could be upset. I'm allowed to be angry. I am allowed to be upset at the world because of what happened to me. But if I cracked under pressure, there's no way for me to come back from that. So I decided that I was going to be that tennis ball and bounce back every single time. So I use this as my analogy every single day in my own personal life. And we laugh about it that I do more by 8 o'clock today than most people do in their whole life, in their whole day, because I'm up at 2:30 every morning. I go to the gym. I'm at work at 5 and I work until 7 o'clock at night. I work for Amazon, if that kind of gives anybody like perspective of like why I work so much. But the thing is during COVID, I look at COVID as honestly the biggest blessing in life for our family, and because the thing is I think it made everybody slow down. And I know a lot of families were affected by this, and I know that families are still being affected by this. But in this time, and because we're going through COVID, we're going through a presidential election that was just derogatory, that I decided that I was going to do my own spiritual fast. And I stepped away from social media. And I was only going to do it for a month. And here I am a little over a year later. And I don't love social media. I'm not even on social media anymore. And I will tell you, it's the biggest blessing in my life because I'm able to just devote my time to my faith, my wife, and my children. And honestly, in this point in my life, I'm 43 years old. And I was like, the second half of my life, I live every single day with, we both hate this word, but contentment. For the first time in my life, I'm happy. I have a home. I've lived in this house. This is the first place I've lived at for more than 4 years, because in the military, it's always 3 years and gone, 3 years and gone. Where now I feel like I have a home. I have a home base. And it was because of God and because of my beautiful wife, Sage. I know that I'm kind of like rambling on, but there's a couple points that I want to, and if some of you guys are note takers, and I know that somebody's been typing the notes into the chat, so I really appreciate that. But I had said hunt for the good. And this is something, whether it's when you wake up in the morning and you just feel like the enemy's attacking you, you just have these demons in your life, whether it's, I have air in my lungs, I have a wonderful, family. Find 3 things in your life that you can be happy for. Show that gratitude, show that praise to God every single morning when you're doing your prayers, and let that be the foundation of your life. So there are 9 things that I can tell you guys that are going to help you have that resilience and that can help you hunt for the good. And the first one is acceptance. I'm a note taker myself. I was preparing late last night because I wanted to make sure I gave you guys the best, because I know you guys just finished Matthew and now you guys are going into Mark. So I just really want to give you guys a little bit of perspective with this. So with acceptance, acknowledge your thoughts, your emotions, and your circumstances for what they are and as they are. Okay, they're going to be there. I want you to understand. So like in Gethsemane, Jesus acknowledged his own feelings. And he said in Matthew 26:39, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And he accepted his circumstances. My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. And like I said, that's Matthew 26:39. And what that does is he's able to acknowledge his own feelings. He knows himself so well. Just think about it. Jesus knew what his ultimate fate was, but you never saw him down. You never saw him depressed about it. What did he do? He stayed strong and resilient for his disciples because he wanted them to grow in the faith, just like Jesus did. Number 2 is stay calm. Pay attention to your emotions, your body's physical responses, and learn to tolerate uncomfortable feelings. Okay, so we all have these negative thoughts. We all have these negative feelings on a regular basis. Learn how to tolerate those. Learn how to just understand why you're having those feelings. So if we put this into biblical terms, so remember that during the illegal trial of Jesus, he managed his emotions brilliantly and was able to say just the right thing and just the right time. So when they asked him, "Are you guilty of blasphemy?" And what did he say? "If you say I did." He is literally being told, he's being blamed for something that, and then they said, are you the Son of God? And he just said it. "You said I am." And he just stayed calm. He could have lashed out. He could have told God, his Father, to punish everybody for this, but he just stayed calm. Number 3 is be authentic. Be true to yourself. Express what you feel and what you want. And here's the most important thing: ask for help. We want to be strong. We want to be resilient. We don't want anybody to ever help us, because what is help in our minds? It's weakness. We don't want to ask for help. So Jesus had an encounter with a woman in the land of the Samaritans. There were plenty of reasons for Jesus to ignore her. She was a woman, a Samaritan, and a sinner. Jesus asked her for some water. Why? Because he was thirsty. He asked for help. If you are authentic, transparent, and honest, you will break through a lot of the man-made barriers in our world. Think about it. When you get pulled over for drinking and driving, what is it called? Driving under the influence. Okay. When you go to social media, everybody now is an influencer. What are they influencing us to do? Who is supposed to be influencing our life? The only person that should be influencing our life is Jesus Christ. Number 4, be realistic. Bad things can happen. Prepare for them and don't let the crisis steal your calm. Okay. You have to be calm in all of these transgressions that are happening in our lives. Jesus knew that the religious leaders were plotting to kill him. That's it from, I don't want to steal it, but Mark 9:31, this is coming. You guys will know this. He knew that bad things were going to happen to him in Jerusalem. And he knew that one of his own would switch sides and hand him over. He didn't let those things blindside him, but neither did he live in fear of it. So he knew that something bad was going to happen, but he didn't let it deter him and let it veer him off course. Number 5, improvise. Stay creative and improvise in the crisis. See the opportunities for growth and be flexible. Everybody in the world went crazy last year during COVID-19. The world shut down in March. We were trying to figure out what the new norm was going to be, whether it was wearing a mask, whether it was, trying to find toilet paper, paper towels, and everybody was struggling through the same thing. But a lot of times we looked at it and said, woe is me. It's only my battle. It's only my struggle. It's only, and I would tell you, our family, I learned how to do things with wood that I've never been able to do. I built like some random things just because I could. I was going on YouTube to learn new things, and I think I cooked filet mignon like 4 nights a week because I was like, I couldn't do anything else, so I was going to cook every single night. But for Jesus, on the night before his death, after observing that Passover meal with his disciples, Jesus retreated to the Mount of Olives. It was a strategic retreat for him. Jesus went to the one place where he knew he could hide, in the thick the olive tree groves, and the one place that offered him an escape route, should God allow him a reprieve from the cross. Jesus was ready to improvise in the face of the impending crisis. He could have easily escaped. He could have easily gone away and never be found again. But the thing is, he didn't. He stayed true. He stayed faithful because God told him, this is what you must do. Number 6, and this is a word that I say on a regular basis, is gratitude. Focus on what you have left and don't dwell on what you've lost. Here's the thing that I tell everybody. We have anxiety and depression in our lives. What causes depression is our past. When we dwell on our past and we think about the things that have happened to us. What creates anxiety is thinking about the future, because we're trying to figure out God's plan. We're trying to figure out what path we're supposed to go on. We're trying to figure all of these things out. However, it's not for us to know. It's only for God to know. We are the chess pieces in this game of life, and only God knows what the plan is. So Jesus was always thankful. When he faced the death of one of his best friends, Lazarus, he wept and then he prayed to God. And he said, Father, I thank you, and you have heard me. So why would Jesus, who always taught us how to pray, why would he always start with a thanksgiving or a praise? Because that's what God deserves. Okay, it's like a 1 in 4 trillion opportunity for us to be born. So why aren't we thankful with that for 1 in 4 trillion? If we want to put that in perspective, if you think about just 1 million seconds is like 11.4 days. 1 billion seconds is like, I think it's like 12 years or something like that. So if you put that in perspective, think about 1 in 4 trillion. That is I think the statistic for how lucky we are to even be in existence in this world. Number 7 is work hard. Okay. Take responsibility for your life and work hard for a better future. This is something that we all strive for every single day. We want a better future, but we have to work hard at what we want to do. Jesus worked hard. He rose early every day, even before the fishermen, just to pray. You guys will read this in Mark 1:35, is that he woke up before everybody else, and he just wanted to make sure that he got in his prayer time and his individual time. And that's kind of like what I do, is like when I go to the gym at like 3 o'clock in the morning, that is my alone time. I don't like going to the gym when nobody else is there, because I like to put my headphones on. I listen to, motivational sermons. I listen to those things because that is my alone time with God. And yeah, it's kind of a weird time because we always talk about Bibles and barbells, and we laugh about it. But the thing is, that's just my one-on-one time. Number 8 is find purpose. What is your purpose in life? And I know that we all struggle with that. And what we want to do is we want to look for the bigger picture in your life and work. Focus on what you enjoy and use it to serve others. And I think that's the one thing that we forget about is service. Even in the time of COVID, the time where we had to socially distance and everything like that sort, we still want to serve each other. Jesus found purpose in everything he did. He didn't allow anything or anyone, even his own disciples, to pull him away from that purpose. And that'll be in Mark 1:36 as well. And the last thing is support. Have at least one person who cheers for you and someone you can turn to in hard times. Now, whether that's your women's group, where I will call myself an honorary woman today, because I've been welcomed into this group. But you find one person that can support you, that can be your cheerleader. Sometimes when you feel like everybody's against you, sometimes you have to learn to be your own biggest fan. And Jesus built a community of support. When many were leaving him, Jesus asked the 12 if they were thinking about leaving him as well. Peter responded, Lord, to whom how shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Peter assured Jesus that they would not stop cheering him on. Towards the end of his life, Jesus told his disciple, I no longer call you servants. I have called you friends. Jesus had a loyal group of friends. And whether it's your Bible study group, whether it's friends that you've had, sorority sisters or whatever, these are the people that you want to keep close to you. I am a creature of habit, and the person that I rely upon is my wife. She is my confidant. She is my best friend. She is that one person that I know that at the end of the day, no matter what, I can come home after a long day of 12 to 15 hours, sit on the couch, and I can listen to her talk about her day and all the negativity that's going around in the world or what's going on social media. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I just listen to her. And then we look at each other and we're like, 7 o'clock, time for bed. And
then he
sure
tells
enough,
me to hunt for the good.
Exactly, every single day. But the reality is we all go through trials, we all go through tribulations, we all have hard times, but don't allow the hard times dictate our lives. Because think about if we think about, like, for me, I'm 43. If I think back by my 43 years, all the good is always going to outweigh the bad. It was a momentary season in my life from 2011 to 2017. That's 6 years out of my life. So for 37 years, I have to think about the good things that happened in my life, the things that made me who I am. And now I know, because I stayed faithful, because I stayed true, I'm living my best life. I'm now planning the second half of my life with my soulmate, with the most amazing person I have ever met in my life. And literally, we talk about it all the time. Like, where do you want to move? Do you want to move here? Do you want to move here? Do you want to buy this? Do you want to do this? Because we have that opportunity, because we have each other. And there's nothing more in this life that I want is just to be there for my wife and my children. And I'll regress a little bit, because I remember the first time that I had talked about my story, I had asked Sage to hold my phone because I was getting ready. I didn't want to have my phone on me. And I remember sitting there I was sitting on the side of this tank, and I was talking about how everything I do in life is for my kids. And I remember her bawling her eyes out. And I had only known this woman for one day. And I'm like, why is that woman crying? Why is she crying? And I learned that because that's what she wanted. She wanted somebody that was so devoted to their kids. That's what she wanted in her life. And I knew that that was God telling us, hey, we gave you broad shoulders. We gave you those trials. We gave you those tribulations. God wasn't testing us. He was preparing us. That is the one thing that I wish everybody can understand, is that God doesn't test us. That's not in his nature. What he's doing is he's preparing us for the next season in life. So go out there, hunt for the good, get rid of the egg, become the tennis ball, and bounce back.
Casey, I mean, I just, my heart just wants to burst with just seeing all that you've been through. I mean, crying, laughing. That was incredible. I hope you write a book, and I want to make a documentary on you. That was just absolutely mind-blowingly good and powerful and amazing. I just have one question for you. Okay, so you survived being shot in combat, you survived cancer, you survived being homeless. If you could go back in the past and do it all over again, would you still go through all that you went through to be where you are today?
100%. And I would tell you, it's funny that you say that. People always ask me, they're like, would I ever go back and do it again? And I keep saying the same thing. I remember one guy, when I was in my wheelchair, had asked me how you stayed so positive even when you can't use your legs. And I looked at him, and I remember specifically telling him, why do you stay so negative when you can use yours? And I remember that one day he actually came to me and said, whatever you're doing, I want a little bit of it. And I remember sitting down with him and talking to him about faith and God and everything like that, and literally even converted him to Christ and brought him to the gospel. And what he did is I actually helped him with my nonprofit. And when he got out of the military, I remember him telling me, he's like, hey, I stayed faithful, I stayed true, and we were able to purchase our first house. I now have a career. I'm now able to live my best life. And I had to do that because I met a guy in a wheelchair that told me really to hunt for the good in life.
I love that God isn't testing us, he's preparing us. And I think it's just such a powerful testimony of God uses all circumstances. There is no pain, there's no tear, there's no anything bad that we go through that God can't and doesn't use to his glory. And it's just that ability of that perspective of trusting him and having that faith and letting him, looking at it from God's perspective and not our worldly perspective. Instead of why me, why me, why me? God, what do you want me to learn from this? God, what can I do to stay in line with your will and do it? And that's what you were so beautifully doing.